Welcome to the Domain of Anguish Speed Clear VoR guide, your ultimate guide for the Visions of Regret Mesmer Spiker, which is also referred to as Caller. We'll first talk about the VoR build and attributes. We'll then touch on the VoR's key mechanics such as spiking correct targets on the main balls and using your microphone to communicate and lead the team on spike. Finally, I will provide commentary on a recent run from perspective of VoR. The VoR is a key spiker in the DoASC team, and if used correctly will have the most damage out of all Mesmers. In terms of build, you will first of all have Visions of Regret, which is your main spike skill and that you must cast on the middle target within each ball. It hexes each individual foe in the adjacent range and deals damage whenever a target uses a skill. So your target selection and skill timing, particularly in Veil, is different to when you have an energy surge. A natural signet costs no energy due to being a signet and should follow VoR in spikes, as well as clean up on single target foes because the single target damage is higher than the AoE damage. For example, Cave Waves in Gloom and Rooms 2 and 4 in Foundry. Overload is a useful hex that should be cast on foes while they are casting skills in order to damage that foe and all adjacent foes as well. For example, Rages and Zoos have long casting time, and while they cast their skills you can deal damage to all adjacent foes. We then have Shattered Illusions, which is used in combination of VoR and Overload to increase the damage intensity to each ball due to AoE damage to the entire ball. For larger groups you can shatter VoR, and on smaller groups, for example less than 6 enemies, only shatter Overload to maintain crucial damage from the VoR. We then have Mistrust, which is another single target hex that should be cast on foes that cast offensive spells in order to trigger AoE damage. You Move Like a Dwarf is a single target skill which is used to help with spikes of the Dream Riders in the second, third and fourth rooms in Foundry, as well as knocking and crippling straggler mobs as well. AF Superiority provides a random Azuran benefit every time you earn experience from killing an enemy, which includes instant recharge of skills and energy gain. Remember to use it before all spikes, especially on the large ball. Even Escape is useful to increase the speed of runs because it enables you to jump to the other team members as well as to and from ledges on the way to Gloom. It is also useful to give minor healing to the snakes in Foundry and other team members while you are running. If you pop all of your pecons, then you will be able to achieve key breakpoints in Domination Magic and Fast Casting. Your Domination Magic jumps from 16 to 20, thereby maximizing damage from the VoR and overall ensuring maximum spiking capacity. Your Fast Casting will also jump from 15 to 19, thereby increasing your casting speed of spells and decreasing recharge time by several seconds. In terms of titles, you want to have rank 5 Norn to max out damage and cripple duration from Gimblad. You should also have rank 5 Azuran for maximum duration of your AF Superiority, thereby saving your energy on recasts and ensuring Azuran bonuses are maintained. In addition, rank 5 Eben Vanguard is needed for maximum heal on your Eben Escape, and the VoR should also lead the team by example in having all required titles. Finally, your Lightbringer title gives you 5% damage boost, and you have +1 damage reduction boost per each rank against Abaddon and his demonic servant. As explained in my earlier Spiker guides, you should have the correct equipment and weapons displayed on the screen. You should check my other guides for more detailed discussion on the armor and equipment, or visit Teach Discord channel, which you can find in the description of this video. As regarding pecons, you must at all times pop both the cupcakes, candy corn and candy apples, and to achieve key breakpoints discussed earlier you should also pop golden eggs, pumpkin pie, lunas and war supplies. The cumulative effect of these pecons improves your spiking capability by approximately 50% and should never underestimate it. VoR should also have at least 20 resurrection scrolls and preferably more in case of the Mesmers needing a fast rest and Cedar not being around to UA them. Personal morale boost or death penalty removal, for example pumpkin cookies, are good. You should never use party morale boost in DoA because this may mess up the team in case instant recharge of skills is needed by using a Dragon Seal or a Power Stone, for example to counter diversion of Mesmers during Earth Spike, or for Trench Tank to get his timing right at Cave or Dervish Lord Hill. Some throwaway stones are helpful in case you need to break aggro. You also need some Tengu Flares to pop for waves 11 and 12 and Gloom Cave waves, as well as to help with spikes in other places as needed. Finally, I always carry some Dragon Seals or Power Stones in case you need to get instant recharge on your skill, but make sure to communicate with your team before you pop one. VoR is responsible for communicating with and leading the team on spike. Your job is to select and spike a good target right in the middle of each ball. Try to select a good target to hit as many of the foes as possible. For example, on the 6-0 spike, usually it's a wide spread of fiends and you should concentrate on the main ball that is being tanked by the emo or the tank. Enemies in nearby range of the main spike target will be hit by the Visions of Regret. Anything outside this radius counts as off damage, and it is TK's responsibility. If something looks as if it might not get hit, assume that it's off damage and instead concentrate on the main ball. Now let's observe a recent run that we did from a perspective of a caller. We start our recorded run in the city of Torc'qua. Prior to start of the run, please ensure that your Lightbringer title is on, because for each rank of Lightbringer you deal plus 5% more damage and have plus 1 damage reduction. Upon entry you want to make sure that all of your pecons are popped, and please check that you equip your 40/40 domination magic set. Trench tank will be making the first ball, so don't start too close while the tank is moving because the mobs may suddenly break away. Run with the team until you get in a position for spiking of the first ball. Spike the ball only once all mobs are settled and the ball is ready in order to avoid scatter of the foes. Once the ball is ready, spike with your VoR followed by shatter, and then tap to another hexed or enchanted foe and spike with your natural signet and shatter. This should be your usual spiking string on all spikes. You must be careful with your energy management in the city because repressive energy costs -2 energy per each cast of a skill and attack of your weapon. After the spike, main tank will be making the big ball on the left side, and you need to work on the city wall by spiking the manks with your VoR and a natural signet on each mank. You should also use your overload whenever you see a mank cast a skill such as Troll Unquent or Read the Wind in order to increase the damage and speed up the kill. You can also use the same strategy in other parts of the run whenever you see a foe cast a skill. You shouldn't use the shatter on city wall in order to ensure that you do not inadvertently remove your VoR on the mank. In addition, you must never Yimland the manks to make sure that they are not KD'd and continue to receive damage from your VoR. If you are suffering from lack of energy, call for the emo to drop your prod bond for you to die and to be UA'd in time to finish the city wall. After all foes in the city wall are dead, turn around and spike the second ball once main tank DCs into the ball and everything is settled. As always, pre-select the middle target in the main ball. After the spike, run through the city gate and run with the other mesmers to get ready for the spike of the first ball inside the city that the main tank is preparing. Pay attention to your compass and avoid aggroing the patrol on the left side. Pre-select one of the casters that will be in the middle of the ball and spike with your VoR followed by shatter, and then tap into another hex to enchanted foe and spike with your natural signet and shatter. As always, make sure you maintain AF superiority on yourself. Once the first inside ball is dead, move to the second inside ball being prepared by the trench tank. Quite often the tank will be leaving runes and or tox as off damage for the TK to spike in order to increase the speed of making this ball. Your first skill on the spike is VoR followed by shatter, and as always then tab followed by a natural signet and shatter. If there are any foes remaining, then help to kill them, especially by spiking them with a natural signet and mistrust on any casters. Once the second inside ball is dead, run towards the city wall and E across the wall to one of your teammates. While the main tank finishes the J-dot ball, get in cast range and pre-select one of the casters in the middle of the ball. Spread out from the other mesmers so you don't all get hit by the cry of frustration and get interrupted. As usual, spike with VoR followed by shatter and then tap to the other hex to enchanted foe and then cast a natural signet followed by shatter. Once the ball is dead, stack up with the team on the chest and continue to recast VoR, overload and shatter on J-dot to speed up the kill. If you're standing in QZ, then you will be able to reapply your VoR almost constantly. City is now done and we run into Veil past the Shadow Arm patrols. Interesting piece of trivia is that Domain of Anguish contains a number of enemies from other parts of the game, including Shadow Army. Menzies has staged his Shadow Army while aiding Abaddon and later Malex in the Domain of Anguish. Similarly, there are some Titans roaming around Foundry, and this is because the Door of Kamali from Prophecy is where Titans are formed and leads here into the Domain of Anguish. Run past the Shadow Army patrol, which goes up and down the map, and you can curse them for those crappy spawns in the Fish of Woe. If all goes to plan, then you want to stand in a little crevice behind the emo, precast Mistrust on one of the hungers, and you can also pre-damage the incoming foes with Overload and Shatter. As explained above, VoR hexes each individual foe in the adjacent range, and other spikers will be relying on your VoR for their unnatural signals to do damage. Accordingly, you shouldn't be spiking too early as you would with E-Search, and instead it is better to cast VoR once main ball is settled in order to hit everything other than the off damage. As mentioned earlier, you are responsible for spiking the main balls, whereas the TK will be spiking any off damage such as Fiend. You should maintain air of superiority on yourself to receive energy bonus and instant recharge of your skills, among other bonuses. Once the last wave on 360 is dead, you split to the Ranger Lord Hill on the west side with the main tank Emo, TK and Cedar. Once the Ranger Lord is by himself, spike with your VoR, Unnatural Signet, and then Overload and Shatter. If you have any additional aggro on you, then you can Yimlad them to avoid dragging them with you to the Clover Trench. Popping a Summoning Stone here should be your last resort because the Dervish Lord team is much more likely to need it. After both Lords are dead, main tank will take the next quest and you should be ready to run inside the Clover Trench as soon as possible. TK should cast the first Mistrust on the Tormentor that spawns on the right side of the trench, and in the meantime you cast a VoR followed by Mistrust, Unnatural Signet, and then Overload and Shatter to finish it off quickly. If TK is delayed, then you should Yimlad the Tormentor until TK can cast his Mistrust. Once Tormentor is dead, stack up with the TK and Cedar on the spot to the right side of the trench. By this point, trench pops will have arrived and you should pre-cast Mistrust on one of the hangars and pre-select the central target for your VoR once the ball is settled due to VoR hexing on the foes in adjacent range, and then Shatter as well as Overload, Shatter, and a Natural Signet on any straggler mobs. While you are finishing the straggler mobs, the main tank will have started the Clover Pool. The ball is liable to be messy and you should concentrate on the main ball, with your target being one of the mobs on the main tank. TK will be responsible for any off damage, but once the main ball is dead, you should concentrate on the Lord first, followed by other straggler mobs. Clean up anything except for hard tormentors, and once those mobs are dead, you split with the main team to the left of the Clover Trench to run to the Ellie Lord. If the group is too close to the Ellie Lord spawn, then come up closer to the Ellie Lord hill, but you must never aggro the Fiends group patrol. You do not need to finish the spirits or sanities, and once other foes are dead, run back to the Clover Spike to kill the Necrolord that the main tank has pulled for you. Spike Necrolord with the Mistrust, VoR, and Yimlad on Soul Feast. If you lost bonds from the emo, then the Cedar will be there to UA you, but if the Cedar dies, then you must scroll him as soon as possible. Once the Necrolord is dead, run out from the Clover Trench and get ready for spiking the front left Smother and Tendril. When the tendril spawns, you should cast Visions of Regret and Unnatural Signet on the tendril and an Overload followed by Shatter to get the tendril to around 5% health. It is important that the front tendril dies only when you see the top 2 tendrils on the left side die and the IU nearly in range of your tendril. This will ensure that the IU does not get stuck on spawned enemies. Once the tendril is dead, run to the spiking spot and get ready to spike the 6-0 ball. Before the spike, pre-select one of the foes settled on the emo and cast your VoR to start damaging the foes. You should communicate with the team and tell them to wait if there are late enemies running in, unless any foes are super delayed, in which case it is best to kill the majority of the foes sooner to avoid emo dying, which might result in a wipe of the entire team. It's better to delay and have everything die cleanly than to spike early and clean up after. And that's it, 6-0 is done and Dreadspawn more is no more. Then run with the team into Gloom via the Gloom Trench. Give the main tank space to jump into the Gloom Trench patrol and spike it. We are now in the foggy Ravenheart Gloom, where the Order of Whispers are hopelessly failing to deal with the forces of Malix. Once you come out from the Gloom Trench, if you are the first one there, then activate the groups at the beginning of Gloom, then E to one of your teammates to jump to the top of the ledge, and while the trench tank preps the cave ball, the team runs to the corner northwest of the cave to be ready to catch waves 4 and 8. These waves consist of earths that can remove enchantments from the trench tank and fail the run if Warden dies. Stay well clear of the spawn point for 12 waves of enemies running to the cave because they spawn in quite a wide area. Spike wave 4 once it spawns and settled on the emo. On waves 4 and 8 you should not shatter your VoR in order to maintain damage intensity on these smaller groups. Once wave 4 is dead, run with the other Mesmers to the spot for spiking the cave ball and kill any wandering tormentors so the monk can safely place his EOE. After it is clear, wait for wave 8 to settle and spike it. VoR must then pop a Tengu Flare and catch waves 11 and 12 with the other Mesmers. Pay attention to whether or not you pop a Sandstorm Tengu by targeting the Ellie and checking which skill he is using, because you will need to kill the Tengus before Death Bringer group if this is the case. If you do not kill the Earth Elementalist Tengu, then it will lead to the Darkness Spike being very poor or fail due to Scatter. Spike with VoR followed by Mistrust, Overload, Shatter, and if needed, Unnatural Signet. Mesmers have a high chance of dying here, and you should be ready to use your Rascals as soon as possible once anyone dies. After the spike is done, turn around and get ready for the spike of the trench tank's ball on the corner in front of the EOE. Again, be careful to avoid early spike and wait for all of the enemies to be bold. Concentrate on the middle target, being one of the casters such as Mind or Water. Remember that VoR only hexes foes in an adjacent radius, which is smaller than the E-Search radius, and therefore you should select a good middle target within this ball, with the foes on the right of the ball being off-damage targets for the TK. Once the ball is dead, you run north with the MLK to the Darkness' spawn point to get ready for the spike of an initial group of Tormentors who will kill the lowly Order of Whispers that always fail to deal with them. If your Earth Elementalist Tengu is still alive, then you need to use the mobs around the rift to kill the Tengus before you get in a position for the Ringer spike. Pre-select one of the casters in the middle of the ball and wait for the main tank to jump in. Your first skill here is VoR followed by Mistrust and then Overload and Shatter. You can also pre-target the flash and ping it to make it easier to wrap the line's comfort. After this is done, Trench Tank will take the quest reward from the voice, and this will spawn the Greater Darkness and 2 Darknesses. You should equip your low energy set for the first 2 waves of Darknesses to hide your energy from the Darknesses energy surge. Important point here on the second wave is that you want to ensure that all of them die at the same time. You need to tap through them and communicate with your team to make sure extra damage is dealt to the ones that aren't getting hit. If any of the Darknesses cast diversion on you, then try avoid losing VoR and Shatter by using a different skill. Once the second wave of Darknesses dies, each of them will pop 5 Earth Babies, making the total of 25. For this spike, your 40-40 set will be fine unless your energy got drained during wave 2 spike, in which case you can switch to your high energy set to give yourself plus 30 additional energy. Make sure you cast your VoR on the Earth in the middle of the pop and keep reapplying VoR to damage as many Earths as possible, especially if Darknesses are killed unevenly so they all die from the EOE. Keep reapplying VoR and shattering your Overload as much as possible for maximum damage to the main ball. So this is Gloom finished. We now face the grueling run to the Foundry, which is the reason Foundry starts are considered to be faster, because you save a whole minute by not having to do this run. On the other hand, Foundry starts come with the massive time waste of Trench Tank and the MLK running back to the city, increasing the time taken to start another run. If your tankers are still alive before moving into Foundry, you need to ensure that they are killed, because TK will need to pop a Ghastly Stone in room 2. This will normally be done by a tank, but equally you can also pull one of the mobs on the remaining Tengus to kill them. Finally, after a lot of huffing and puffing, we arrive at the Foundry of Fail Creations, our last area. It consists of 5 rooms, with the final room aptly called the Big Room because it is the largest and it also contains the Fury Group. Please ensure that you take the first quest at the NPC outside of Foundry because you will be taking the first 2 snakes in the final room. First room is the easiest. Wait for Marganite to spawn, and once the tank jumps into the ball, spike the ball. You should pre-select the Dabby, and your first skill is VoR followed by Mistrust, a Natural Signet and Shatter if needed. Once Marganites are dead, there will be an additional pop of 2 Rages and 2 Despairs. Your job here is to spike the Despairs and Rages quickly by VoR, Overload and Shatter. Rages are a good target for Overload due to long cast times and the fact that other Mesmers will be Mistrust in the Despairs. Second room will contain a group of Marganites and Torch Webs in the initial pop. Your job here is to spike the main ball with your VoR, Overload and Shatter, as well as a Natural Signet on any targets outside the ball. If the ball is nearly dead, then you want to save your Mistrust for the Dream Riders in the next pop. As always, maintain Air of Superiority in this room to ensure that even if you get power blocked, you will have a chance of instant recharge of your skills as an Azuran bonus. Once this initial group dies, another group of 2 Dream Riders and 3 Torture Webs will spawn. You need to focus on the Dream Riders and to cast VoR followed by Mistrust and Yimlad once you see the first spell being blocked, and then Overload and Shatter. This way you will avoid the Dream Riders casting Mirror of Disenchantment on the team, which can remove the prod bond from the entire team. Once the spawn is finally dead, you move into the third room. Third room will involve spiking 2 balls. To the left of you, the tank will be bowling a group of 3 Torture Webs and 1 Dream Rider, while the second tank will be doing the big ball on the north side of the room. Give the tank space and do not aggro either group while they are being pulled. Concentrate on the Torch Webs and spike them with VoR, Mistrust followed by Overload, Shatter and the Natural Signet. You can also Yimlad the Dream Rider to keep it from running outside of the ball. After the first ball is dead, turn around and spike the second ball on the other tank. This is a dangerous spike, and you should command your team here to avoid spiking too early and call your VoR as the first skill on the ball. Once the ball is dead, turn around and run into the fourth room. In fourth room, we use a tactic called the push, where the entire team runs to the further gate and spikes the first group of 3 Torture Webs and a key while running. Ideally, the group spawns far enough to avoid aggro from the team so the tank can quickly ball it, but if it is in aggro, then the team moves and spike. Concentrate on the Torture Webs and spike them with your VoR, Mistrust followed by Overload and Shatter. After this group is dead, get all the way into the corner with the team. There will be a spawn of Dementias, and you should spike with your usual spiking string with VoR, Shatter, and then a Natural Signet and Shatter. Third wave will have some Despairs, and during the spike, please be aware of the corpse aggro and do not run out from the corner until the tank brings the ball to you. Your first skill on this wave is VoR, followed by Mistrust on one of the Despairs, Overload and Shatter. Finally, fourth wave will have 1 Dream Rider, 1 Despair, 1 Torc'qua, 1 Key, and 3 Fury Titans. Tank will pull this group, and you should be aware of the corpse aggro to avoid aggroing the ball too early before Despair start attacking the tank to avoid ruining the ball and Despair casting chill blains on the team. Once the ball is ready, concentrate on Despair and spike it with your VoR followed by Mistrust as well as Overload and Shatter. Ensure that the big Fury Titan is dead, and if the baby Fury Titans are following the team, then kill them as well. After the gate opens and it is clear, then move into the final 5th room of Foundry. Take the quest reward and the next quest from the NPC directly in front of you. Your key job here is to take the first 2 snakes along the left wall. Keep running along the wall until you get to the first snake, but you must take it only after the team has run past the snake in order to avoid anyone getting stuck in the spawn. Once you take the first snake, keep running along the wall, and if any of the dimensions get too close, then Yimlat them and keep running. You will then need to take the second snake once you can see that the team and the first snake have run past it, and repeat the same exercise as for the first snake. If all goes to plan and there is no need to break Magonize, then you can run to the spiking spot near the Beast Cave. If however you get aggro of Magos, keep running along the wall until you break and only then return to the spiking spot. Once the beast's ball is settled on the IU, spike the ball and concentrate on the beast first, followed by rages and then dementias. Spike with the usual spiking string with VoR followed by shatter and then overload and shatter as well as a natural signet. You can also mistrust rages to kill them quicker. Once the beast of our group is dead, the Seeder will take the quest from the general to spawn the Fury group. For a clean Fury spike, stand in the casting range and you must ensure that your VoR is cast on the ball in order for the spike to go cleanly. You then spike by reapplying Mistrust, Overload, Shatter and Natural Signet on the ball. Important point here is that this is another dangerous spike and you must command your team and avoid standing too close to the other Mesmers to avoid interruptions during the spike. It will not be there, so scroll instantly if someone dies. Well, that's it folks, thanks for watching and I hope this guide proves useful on your runs. All the best and always yours, Darkness Behind.